Welcome to this episode of the Strong Kind Podcast. This episode is with Luke Tulloch. Luke is a coach. I would call Luke like a strength and muscle and strength and conditioning coach. Luke posts a lot about building muscle and what it takes to build muscle and get in shape and create a physique that a lot of us would honestly like to have. He's also no nonsense in the fact that it is challenging for a lot of people to do this, and the standards of what like an athletic or a lean physique are has changed. We had a really great conversation. Luke's a really human-oriented coach. He seems like a really compassionate guy. We even talked about compassion therapy as part of, working with humans. It was a great discussion. I really found a lot of value in it. Luke's a really knowledgeable guy, really kind guy. And you can find him at _Luke Tulloch on Instagram. I will link his Instagram in the show notes. And you can always follow me at dr.dave.strengthandkindness on Instagram. Appreciate you so much for being here. And if you're struggling with pain or injury or just enjoying your training and you want to feel good in the gym and feel good outside of it, please reach out. I'm happy to help in any way I can. Thanks so much for your time. Thanks for being here. Peace. All right, Luke Tulloch. Did I get it right? Okay,
you got it.
I just confirmed and then I almost botched it. But Luke, I'm excited to talk to Luke. I've followed Luke for a little while now, and I just learned that he's an Aussie that's in Sweden. So let's start there, because you said you got stuck in the pandemic. It's crazy, man. It's been 5 years of life. But what took you to Sweden, and then how'd you get stuck there?
Yeah, well, my missus is Swedish, and we met in Australia when she was backpacking. And then at one point I was like, you know what? Started a bit to get online with the personal training and stuff. And then I was like, we would kick ourselves if we didn't go traveling, considering we can still work wherever. Mm-hmm. So I planned a couple of seminars overseas and stuff, went and did one in Stockholm. And that was the weekend when I think the UK closed their borders, or Denmark did. And we were due to go to the UK next and drive around Scotland and then go to Portugal. And we were like, okay, I think we just got to sit tight. So we did. And then the pandemic happened, so we just stayed.
Yeah. So I think what's interesting to me as somebody from the US, it's like the mobility that people have in the UK. I've been to the UK, I think it's awesome. But the mobility from country to country is really cool. But what's been the contrast from you being Australian to being in the UK? I don't know how much mobility you have currently now, how much you can go to other countries, but at that time it was we're in Sweden now. But what's the contrast between Australia and being in Sweden, and then maybe just Europe in general?
Yeah, I mean, the mobility is awesome. I mean, we lived in the Netherlands for 8 months as well, just because we were like, well, we're kind of sitting here at my in-laws' place in Sweden during the pandemic. It was a bit boring. Eventually we were like, we got to do something here. Mm-hmm. So we went and lived in the Netherlands for a bit and then went back to Sweden. But it's definitely different with all the mobility that you get around places. And Australia is so far from everything. So you really value being able to so you can just go to France for a weekend or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. But definitely was a struggle. I mean, I got a kid now and I got an apartment here, but it's still I work from home, and so socializing with people is a bit tough. Obviously there's a language barrier, people all speak English and I speak Swedish now, but it's not the same as being a native speaker. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's got its pros and it's got its cons, and I always thought man, there would be a definite this country's better. I was kind of hoping for that. So yeah. But it's real 50-50, so
yeah.
It makes it a bit tough.
That's kind of a truth of life, right? The reason that the grass is greener type of aphorism or whatever that is it's so true. It's because I'm sure Sweden has its awesome things, but I'm sure damn, I want to go back to Australia and hang out with my mates and XYZ. The other thing about you just mentioned there, and we can get into this is a good segue, is so I'm a physio, and online coaching is far and away better in practice as like a physio for like 90% of the time, right? And I love it. I'm like basically helping people like lift weights and like just do stuff that like your body will be okay if you just keep going, right?
Yeah.
And it makes it sound really simple, but like the nuances and the complexities come like case by case as like we're working together type of thing, right? Now, do I miss certain aspects of like in-person care? Yeah. Like, do I miss having like coworkers I actually like? Yeah. But then sometimes like unfortunately a lot of the time coworkers like didn't love, and it was a pain in the ass. So, and the socialization piece, like my wife works from home too. We have a 1-year-old, which is good, but like there's a lot of times I'm like, I need like some other people here,
Yeah,
right?
Dude,
So
I relate to that so hard.
and it's good, but like, yeah, I think that's what I think we're it's crazy. It's 5 years since the pandemic, or really like 3-ish, whatever, since it's like we've been kind of moving out of that. But it's hard to like normalize. Like I still think people are ramped up. Their freaking batteries are still run down from that era. And then now we're in this phase, which like was what I wanted to reach out to you about. Just like there's so much information. We're almost in like a information like overload. We're so distracted type of era, and it's really weird for people.
Yeah, like you mentioned having a 1-year-old, and my daughter's 3, so nearly 4. So we're sort of similar stages, I guess. And like I often think about our life back in Australia, but that was also like, I'm not really comparing apples to oranges because that was pre-pandemic, it was pre-kids and all that sort of stuff. And I think probably a lot of people have gone through that. They've maybe had career transitions and had kids during the pandemic and stuff. And so there wasn't really a smooth transition because we went pandemic and then transition into parent life or whatever, where like you don't socialize as normal, you don't sleep as well, whatever. So yeah, I think that's the whole thing. But I mean, I agree that there's been a massive explosion of knowledge out there. I think because I've been on Instagram and stuff like properly, I think since like 2016 or something, maybe 2017. I don't know, somewhere around 2017, 2018. I don't know, somewhere around there. And like, I really remember back then sharing some stuff that I thought was pretty basic and people just frothing over it, being like, oh my God, like this dude's so smart. And I'm like, I just fucking told you how much protein to eat. It's like not really a big deal. But, now I think the average person is exposed to such high level information and so much of it that I think you're right. It's like very difficult to differentiate between what's right and what's wrong, or maybe more likely what's useful and what isn't useful for them. And so like my client base is 100% people who are like analytical, intelligent, but very much like me, where they like to gather information. They like to make the right decision.
Yeah.
And so they overthink things and they have trouble implementing.
Yeah. It's, you put it in a really, a very like good way, a very like kind way, like, because what it's turned into is like almost like an intellectual, I call it like an intellectual jerk off session about like the like, this is the best information out there. And it's like, yeah, but if you're not actually applying any of this shit, like it doesn't matter, right? And it's easy to just consume more than actually go to the gym. And I'm reading this book called 4,000 Weeks by Oliver Burkeman.
It is the best book. It's so good.
Yeah. I listened to it like 3 years ago, and I'm like, I need to read this at some point, because I definitely like got some of the lessons, but reading it, it's like life is about inherently accepting that there are trade-offs, right? Yeah. And training is about like accepting that like you only if you got 45 minutes to train, you can't do every exercise. You got to like prioritize and execute and be okay with just the fact that, hey, that was a good session, that did what my body needed, and moved on, right? And move on, right?
Yeah, definitely. And like, actually, I think also having some constraints is like super helpful. I actually think it might have been in one of his emails where Oliver Burkeman, who's the author of that book, wrote about how what a lot of us do is we try and keep our options open, because like once you take a path, it sort of shuts off the other paths. And we think it's a good thing. Oh, I keep my options open. I'm not going to commit to anything, whatever. But when you're doing that, you're actually procrastinating.
Yeah.
And you're kind of not getting the benefit of any of those because you're trying to get the benefit of all of them. And so like I often will say to people who I'm training, it's like, look, there is a theoretically optimal, but there's an optimal for your situation where if you have a time constraint, for example, that's actually good for us because it gives us some boundaries to work in. And then we're going to create something that's actually going to work for you. And then you've got a path to move forward, as opposed to having literally everything as an option, everything on the table. That's kind of difficult to be like, well, where do I start? Where do I go with this?
Yeah. Well, it's like getting married is a great thing because it like takes you off the thing. Hopefully you were like, all right, I'm done looking. I'm going to make the best of this situation, right? Now, is it hard? Are there other attractive potential partners out there? Yeah, but like also the trade-off is like you get to work on this relationship for the rest of your life. Dude, you've mentioned it too. Like having kids, crazy.
Yeah.
Getting on the same page with a partner, hard. But the rewards often are really good, right? And again, like, yeah, I mean, so what I am, dude, and like where a lot of my clientele comes from is like I was a program hopper. I'd get 3 weeks into something and I'd be like, okay, I'm bored or this isn't working. And honestly, like just carrying out stuff for 12 to 16 weeks and trusting it and going. And I also just like to do everything. I don't know. You're from Australia. Did you play rugby? Did you play?
Yeah, rugby.
Okay.
I got an Aussie rugby shirt on right
That's
now.
what I thought that looked like an emblem right there. So, but yeah, like, which rugby is kind of a little bit of everything type of sport, you know? I grew up playing soccer. I played some rugby in college. I love that game. And yeah, and then I my first training was, I was introduced to CrossFit, which like appealed to me a little bit because I had kind of had like the dumb dichotomy of, well, you can't run and lift type of stuff already happening. And I'm like, well, CrossFit seems like you can do it all, but it gives people that hit, and it doesn't mean that it doesn't work. But yeah, like for me, it really is like, dude, just pick 10 exercises and try to get better at those exercises and show up 3 to 4 times a week. And then a lot of my other problems, man, is I suck at resting. Like I just don't, I want to be moving and doing stuff, which is not a bad thing, but like it'll also sabotage you in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, can definitely relate to that. I think like when you try to do, again, if you try to do everything, then sometimes you end up with nothing. So it's a little bit tough sometimes. And like, I kind of like that aspect of people exploring their physicality, right? And like, hey, I can run and I can lift at the same time. Like, but there's so much shit that you could do and get better at. So like scrolling on your phone and seeing someone who can do handstands and being like, that's what I'm going to do. And then the next week someone's doing the splits. Oh, I'm going to try that. And then someone's like hybrid athlete. And you're like, okay, sweet. I'm going to do high rocks or whatever. Like, yeah, it's too much, right? And then you kind of feel shit because you're not going anywhere. And it's like, dude, you're just overthinking it. Like just pick something and just fucking focus on it.
When you do that, because that's one of the things I am learning. It's like, and it doesn't mean that you can't have like a little bit of everything in your program, but there probably needs to be some prioritization, right? And you even posted about periodization yesterday. Like, you know, in my brain, periodization, like especially like John Keely's work for team athletes, it's like, yeah, like it's not doing what we think it's doing. But what it does do is it gives people phases to focus so that they can like just put down the other shit, or at least to some degree, and then, okay, I'm moving into this next phase. And that's what I've seen be really important for people. Humans, have you ever read Mladen Jovanovic, like the training manual? Training manual?
Yeah.
That book is amazing, but it's basically like, just categorize everything. And I'm like, oh, okay. And it's true though. Like when we like have this like thing to like, oh, I'm in this phase, it allows us to put down the fact that we're making a trade-off, and like that can be a really good thing, right?
Yeah, and I think, do you know what? On top of that, though, like we're also finding more and more research comes out, and I guess the more that people experiment, you kind of realize that to maintain a physical quality doesn't take very much.
Yeah.
So it actually makes a lot of sense from a technical point of view to have specialization phases. And I'm not just talking about body part specialization. I'm talking about physical quality specialization. You know, you could literally, this year I spent a good chunk of time, you know, like I've got a limited amount of training time. So like I lift in the gym like maybe 3 hours a week. And So when I'm at the gym, I'm kind of like, okay, I got to fit in whatever mobility or warm up I want to do, and then whatever lifting I want to do or whatever. And so I just kind of bias it. Like for the first few months of this year, I spent like 50% of the time doing stretching and mobility work and 50% of the time doing like bodybuilding work. And like I maintained all my muscle and I made some flexibility gains. And then I can kind of flip that and push the slider along and go like, cool, now I'm going to transition to like 80 or 90% lifting and 10% on the flexibility, and the flexibility stays and the lifting gets better. Like, so I think that that's a really underrated way of doing things. And then it gives you kind of the best of both worlds, because then you are working on other stuff that's fun, it's fresh, it's new, it's exciting, but you're actually sticking to something long enough that you develop the physical qualities and you have a focus for 3 or 4 months, which, you know, I agree. That's like the great thing about periodization.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned, so like only being able to be in the gym for 3 hours a week. Like, yeah. Honestly, I feel like 15 years ago, people were like that's great.
Yeah,
like,
I know, right?
Now it's like, wait, you're not in the gym for 7 hours a week? Like,
how are you going to fit in your 40 sets, bro?
Yeah. So what are the things that, like, if you were gonna, you know, somebody wants to work with you, the better question. You mentioned the type of person that comes to work with you is like the information gatherer, the procrastinator, right? Like, what are like the 5 big boxes? You probably have your own procedure for doing this, but like the things that you're like trying to clarify, and then we want to check these boxes to help them make progress, right?
Yeah, I think the first thing is that people just have to get really clear on like what are they actually trying to do, you know? Mm-hmm. And I do this a few different ways, but actually on a completely macro point of view, I have a little process that I go through with, I used to make it mandatory when people started, but a few people were like not super into it. But I get them to actually clarify their values and where training fits into their life.
Yeah.
You know, because once you go through and this comes out of cognitive behavioral therapy, acceptance and commitment therapy, and a lot of like those sort of areas of psychology. My background's in neuroscience, so I did a bit of psychology in my undergrad and that sort of stuff. And once you sort of clarify what your values are, like what you're actually looking to get out of life, what's important to you, sometimes you realize that like the training is not as high as you thought and you need to be spending more time on other things in your life.
Yeah.
Or you kind of realize that like what training is giving you is maybe different to the goal that you're trying to pursue in the gym. Like if you're just obsessed with getting bigger and changing yourself physically, like maybe you actually realize, well, training is really just about me having fun in the gym, you know, and so it changes how you might approach your training. So from a macro point of view, I actually get a lot of people to start there, because that then informs how we're going to set up the training program. But once we get into the training side of things, it's like you just need to kind of focus on some of those principles. I have an approach where I like to focus on the quality and the effort of everything that we do first. And to do that, I then keep the volume and the exercise variety relatively low, because then I think people can just focus on what they're doing and making it really high quality without getting nervous about like, oh my God, I got to do like, you know, 20 sets of my legs in this session. Like, how am I going to get through all of this at everything at like RPE 9, you know? So I like to start from that lower end, and then that means that they have a lot of energy and a lot of focus, a lot of mental space to actually get after the training and do those basic things right. And then we layer on top of that as we go, because everyone's going to have some sort of threshold, I suppose, where things, you know, I suppose diminishing returns kicks in, where their enjoyment stops, or where they start making more trade-offs into other things that they care about in their life, or other training qualities that we want to pursue. And the only way you can find where that limit is if you start low and build up. If you're already, like a lot of people who come to me, if they're already doing it at like quite a high level, then you don't know where to go. Like you don't know where to find that. So that's kind of the initial process that I go for. And for me, like the thing that underlies all of that is the effort for me.
Yeah. So there's like, oh man, that was gold, because I acceptance and commitment therapy, like in 2020 I got low, like because of I was still working in healthcare, and there's a lot of factors in I don't even like calling it mental health because I really feel like it's just the human organism. Like, I mean, I was consuming way too much news, dude. I was working with people who were isolated, like 70, 80-year-old people who I was like, I also realized this. We went to the mall like on Monday, and I like tell a story about people in my brain like super fast. Like I saw this old elderly man. Like I'm like, I hope that guy's not lonely. Like I hope he's not like like, and it like that affects me physically, right? And
Yeah, dude.
but like acceptance and commitment therapy, like cognitive behavioral therapy, ACT, like man, they are such good practices to like tease out your what it's really about. Like because you're right, like. Training for me, like there is a sense of like overcoming inadequacy, right? But that's okay. Like getting stronger, it's okay to think about some of these things. One of the questions I'm trying to ask people more and more is like, what's the goal you don't tell people about? Like that you're afraid to like just because that goal is okay to have. We've almost created this weird like space where it's like it's not okay to lose weight for like people like I should love my body, and it's like you can love your body and still want to like lose weight. Like it's just a meat suit, right?
100%.
And that's something that I've had to work on is like, yeah, dude, you can love your body and like still like want to change it. That's okay. But the values piece and then the actually what's this for, because it's kind of not either or. It's like this is for enjoyment and it's for like, yeah, I do want to put on muscle. It's like, okay, but like let's prioritize enjoyment because that's going to keep you showing up and that's going to be huge, right? And then the other thing you mentioned there, just like the clarity, like people have taken on other people's goals. And it's like, let's get down to what matters to you and then put your intention and energy into it, because that is what I see a lot of people doing too. It's like you just don't have the energy to try to meet yourself at this 6-day-a-week plan. And that doesn't mean you don't do physical activity on every day of the week. It just means you go for a walk or you get on your bike or whatever and you go for a chill thing. And then when you go to the gym, you put a shit ton of effort in that 45-minute period, right?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I definitely relate to like taking on other people's concept of what your training should look like or whatever, like especially as a coach, because for me, like pre-pandemic, pre-kids, like I mentioned, I can train max like 3 hours maybe now a week in the gym. But like before I was doing maybe 9 hours a week of lifting, and I was like 5 or 6 kilos heavier of muscle basically, and then you have this pressure when like you run a significant part of your business through social media and you're a coach yourself and you're trying to coach other people to put on muscle or whatever, to look a certain way. And I think like for me, I don't want to train like I used to. I don't want to do that. I have other priorities in my life, although training is still a very, very big part of it. It's very, very important. But you definitely do feel that pressure, So I think even like someone like myself who has like done specific work on that, and I am self-aware in that regard, you think about the people who aren't yet so self-aware about it or haven't addressed it or haven't done any work on it, and how much of a psychological pressure that must be on them as well. Perhaps they don't even realize it. And then we're using social media more and more, and it just keeps reinforcing. So there's definitely a big factor there for sure.
So let's talk about a few of the things. Okay, well, you mentioned playing rugby. Like, what got you into like lifting, training people? Like, what's been your like pathway there?
It was rugby to start with. So I was playing rugby at school, and we had a history teacher at my school who had trained like a couple of sprinters, and like one guy in particular I think competed at the Commonwealth Games, or maybe he went to the Olympics even. And so he started teaching some of us how to lift, like how to do like power cleans and squats and this kind of stuff in the gym when I was like 15 or something. So that's where it all started. And then I used to play cricket and rugby, and then sort of got out of cricket a bit. And our school was like, well, instead of playing cricket during the summer, you can just lift and then play rugby in the winter. So I did that. And then I just kind of fell in love with it, and off it went. And I went to university, initially starting a business degree because I didn't know what else to do. And my mum kind of went, like, you're not real into this, so why don't you go do personal training in the meantime as a course, and then figure out what you want to do from there. So that's what I did. And then while I was personal training, I went back to uni and got more into the biology side of things and that kind of stuff. And that was like, I started personal training when I was 19, 18, something like that. So yeah, it was like 17 years ago. So that was pretty much it, man.
So you're 36?
Yeah, 37 this year. Yeah.
Nice. I just turned 30. I turned 37 in August as well. Like,
yeah, cool.
It's both. Well, first and foremost, this is like, well, like, what is it about aging that we get, like, that people get so wrapped up in? And like, what, like, I overarchingly feel like pretty good. But like, I also just there part of me is like a physio who wants people to be like, you can fucking keep doing everything you want. I mean, like, you can keep doing a lot of what you want for a long time. There's just there's just a difference between being a 19-year-old kid and being a 37-year-old father, right? Yeah, so, but like, what is it about the age and like all that type of stuff that people get wrapped up in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, it's just societal expectations, isn't it? Like, I don't know. I mean, if you think about it, like, logically, it's like people, when you're a kid and a teenager, I mean, we used to run around everywhere. We would jump off of things. Like, we were essentially just doing plyometric training all day long.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We were lifting ourselves up into trees like that's doing chin-ups. You know what I mean? And then you stop running and you stop doing that stuff and you take a break for 5 years while you go to university and you get your first job or whatever, and then you try and do it again and you're like, oh, I'm getting old. Like, no, you just haven't done it in a while, man. Like, you literally had 20 years of prep from when you were a toddler all the way up to when you were 18, and then you stopped doing it, and now you don't have the prep anymore. Like, so I think it's just this mental thing of like, well, I must be getting old, as opposed to like, oh, I just need to actually start doing these things that I want to do again. But like,
the hard thing too is just people like don't meet themselves where they're at when they reset.
Well,
when
exactly.
They start again, right?
Exactly. I mean, I'm watching my kid now and how she's like jumping off stuff and all that sort of thing, and I'm like, wow, like I actually haven't done anything like that myself in I don't know how long. You know what I mean? So for me to start like jumping off something that's waist height, if I were to land and freaking blow my knee or something, it wouldn't be too surprising because I haven't worked up to that. Whereas she's spent the last 3 years working up to that.
Exactly.
So like, there's definitely an element of that. But you know, when you look at like minimum effective dose for everything, you start to realize that it doesn't take that much for you to maintain those physical qualities. And yes, it does decline at some point, but we probably realize now that's probably more like, you know, when you're in your 60s or something rather than when you're in your 30s.
Yeah. Well, I think like the societal expectations, I also think, like, this is going to sound like a dick, but people like having an excuse. Like the internal narrative. Man, like I like went through that phase when like I was like in middle school, like where I wasn't like the top athlete, and I like, so like you kind of have, it's like, are you going to be injured? Like, are you going to be the injured athlete? Like, you know, and like you got to kind of learn to be like, no, I'm actually going to not succumb to that. But like, there's people who, you know, like, I know there were dudes playing football, like, you're not really hurt, you just don't want to practice and you don't want to look like you're not good or XYZ, right? Like, there is that, like, there, you know, when we're hurting, there is, and I don't think it's necessarily completely conscious, but like there is this element of like, I'm hurting, I can't do stuff, and it's not my fault, like, you know, and it's like, it's not all your fault, but like, you got to just freaking try, man. Like, and it's hard to try. It's hard to try in our society anymore. Like, so the like, and I, you know, I got into, after physio school, I got engaged, and I'm like, I'm going to do a bulk, and I'm going to get strong, because I'd never been able to just let myself do a bulk. And it did. Like, I got stronger. I also added, like, 40 pounds. Like, it wasn't a good bulk, dude. It was, like, it was a dirty bulk. And, like, it was right before I got married, too, which my wife was not stoked about, because I looked, like, chubby in our wedding photos. But, and then, like, you know, I kind of start to pull back from that. And I, like, couple years ago, probably 3 years ago, because we moved into a house and I was playing. I'm like, I'm gonna go back and play rugby because I need some socialization and I want to play it again. And it was fun. I was definitely stronger. Like I could definitely. I played flanker in college and I played flanker again and I was stronger and I could. But man, like I was popping calves and just like feeling like everything was tweaking and it was like, what is up with it? I'm like, well, I haven't done this type of stuff. Like, you know, short burst sprinting, any of that type of stuff for like 8 years, right? Yeah, and it did make me feel old, but I'm like, I had to be like, yeah, dude, you're just not trained for this. Like, all you've been doing is work in the gym. And I kind of also don't like, there are dudes out there doing bodybuilding splits who are still athletic as shit just because like they've kept training and like I almost think like we've kind of created these categories for what works and what doesn't. It's like
Definitely.
a lot of stuff can work. It's really just your application and your implementation, right?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with that. If you sort of view yourself as like I'm doing bodybuilding training, I mean, like it doesn't have to be so siloed. 100% it doesn't have to be. So, yeah, it's interesting. But I think definitely what you're saying before, like there's definitely an aspect like that whole biopsychosocial model, right? And maybe the subconscious expectations of when you get older, how things are supposed to be and how you start defining yourself. Like I had I tweaked my back when I was like in my early 20s and like still kind of get on and off back pain to this day because I think I spent so long just kind of viewing myself as like someone with back pain. And almost, again, sort of using that as an excuse as to why I couldn't perform to the same level that I did beforehand, probably because I was afraid that like if I went out and squatted my max again, it wouldn't be as high as before. And I had this real problem with like meeting my past performances and this kind of stuff. So there's so much wrapped into it, I suppose. It can get pretty complex, but there's definitely that strong element of it. And I hate to be like, oh, no excuses, grind, bro, but like there is an element of like sometimes you just need to let go of that and actually allow yourself to just have the possibility, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's an element I want to get into just like stress because one of your posts I just like was scrolling your feed like the you know too stressed to grow, right? Like humans are still an organism that like you know we are responding to our environment where we like we're complex. We're a complex system. There's a lot of stuff going on. I actually have a client right now who's had major life changes. Like, it's hard. Like he has like he's a chiropractor in the States, and like he basically just doesn't want to be a chiropractor anymore. And he's like, and he's also gonna get married in like a year or 6 months to a year, and it's like these identity things, like, and he's like, dude, I'm like down like 10 pounds in the past like month. And I'm like, yeah, like, do you feel like just life is lifing, right? He's like, so hard. And I'm like, yeah, well, A, we got to accommodate for that. And like, we got to drop training stress and still what do you want to work on? But most of it's, dude, just keep showing up because that's going to be good for you. But just manage your expectations, right? But like, people don't know what stress is. Like, we don't really understand it, right? And how does, like, your background in neuroscience, like, help you in any way? But, like, do you ever feel like you're playing a little bit of, like, psychotherapist with people a little bit? Because you kind of are, right?
Oh, yeah, big time. And for a long time, there's a strong, like, scope of practice in the back of your head, like, all the time. But the reality is you can open conversations about this stuff with people and they can sort of self-guide a little bit, and if they need to go to a pro, they can. But, like, I'm not sure there was anything specific in the neuroscience that really taught me much about this, but I think it gave a springboard into CBT, ACT, and then, like, more lately I've been looking a lot more at compassion-focused therapy. I don't know if you've come across that before, but it's got a sort of evolutionary grounding in saying that there are basically three systems in our psychology. There's a threat system, a drive system, and a soothe system. And most of us kind of get stuck pinballing between drive and threat, and we find it very difficult to access the soothe system. So the concept is like, even if you are quite well versed in things like CBT and you use mindfulness techniques and this kind of stuff, if you're unable to truly access like your soothe system and actually bring yourself physiologically down into a calmer state, then sometimes doing something like mindfulness or trying to almost logic your way out of negative thoughts can sort of backfire, because you're still in this like sort of elevated, stressed kind of state where you're trying to deal with a threat as your brain perceives it. So that's kind of been a bit of a change from the way that I approach things a little bit with some of my clients now, and how I think about stress. But
I want to like jump in because I haven't seen compassion focused therapy, but it makes a lot of things like almost click, right? Like, because what I've been telling more and more people, it's like, okay, like, because a lot of people kind of get the fight or the flight and the rest and I digest, and it's like, how much do you think you're in fight or flight mode? And like 80% of the time. I'm like, all right, I don't know how to help you get into rest and digest, but we gotta like think about this stuff. But you're right, the light bulb there is like having, there's an element of being a human that when we do good things for other people, we feel good, right? Definitely. And also, like, it's okay, man, it's also wild how bad people feel about like self-care. Like they feel like they're being selfish, and it's like, no, if you don't take care of yourself, like, you're gonna run down your battery, right? But it kind of gives a little bit more contextualization to, like, I have multiple people, it's like, I'm trying to do mindfulness, but their conception of mindfulness is like I have to have like a calm brain, and it's like, no, like, you're just dude, you're just, that's not how it works. You're just watching what comes up and kind of being okay with that, and that's okay. Like, you're right, if you're supposed to be mindful but you think you're doing it wrong, it's not going to help you in the way that just being an observer of these things is. So I just want to jump in because that's a huge point right there.
Yeah, I think it does click for a lot of people who have spent a bit of time looking at this stuff. Like, it definitely makes sense. So yeah, it's like it's quite a powerful thing to kind of link all of the available stuff that you've probably come across already, to link all of that stuff together. But the key, I suppose, is that, like, you really need to find ways to support that soothe system. And then that allows you to sort of access threat and drive systems when appropriate. But the key you mentioned there, like compassion to other people, but also compassion to yourself. So you're sort of treating yourself as an equal part of your community, maybe even like more important, right? And I think that was kind of a breakthrough for me as well, is that, like, when you're trying to, especially as a coach and as a father and a husband, you've got all these other people that you need to think about, and you need to treat them with compassion and respect and what they need from you. But in many ways, I think we sort of forget about ourselves in that picture, and that we need an equal amount of focus as all of those other people. And so it's not sort of selfish sometimes to choose between, like, yourself and your partner, to sometimes choose yourself. Because if we're going to sort of split this 50-50, then, like, I need some attention too. You kind of got to think about that as well. So that was kind of a bit of a sort of breakthrough concept for me, to kind of be like, well, if I was like a third party observer, how would I, like, distribute the sort of time and resources to this person who is myself? That kind of made a lot of sense to me. So I really like that approach. If people want to look into it a little bit more, like, you can have a look at some of the exercise, but a lot of it comes down into finding ways that sort of help you access your soothe system. And it's all about just trying to, like, they use a lot of imagery and things like this, because the analogy I often see used in lectures and stuff on compassion focused therapy is, like, you can sort of physiologically drive a lot of the physical responses in your body through mental processes. Like, you can, for example, become physically aroused or sexually aroused through what you're thinking about. In the same way that, like, if you have some of these recurring thoughts, if you can sort of interrupt those and you can replace them with more soothing type imagery, and you can kind of enter that more soothed state, I suppose. But it's a little bit different for everybody. Like, it can get a little bit complex in how it's applied, but that's kind of the fundamentals of it. So it's a pretty useful tool to kind of integrate the CBT and all that other stuff as well.
Have you, like, I've been on like a predictive processing like type of kick, which is basically like, the book that I probably reference most is How Emotions Are Made by Lisa Feldman Barrett.
Cool.
But you mentioning compassion focused therapy. I mean, like, I'm gonna check that out because like it is like trying to just create. I was actually thinking this morning. It's like knowledge really can be power, right?
Yeah.
But you have to like implement it, right? And it's like going back to what we've already talked about earlier. It's like people struggle with the implementation of everything, and that's really like where like you make progress in life is like actually breaking bad, quote unquote, bad habits, right? Or like using the information that you've learned to help you kind of level up and then stay there, right? But some of that is like the predictive processing, like I have the resources to handle this situation, like in your brain, like people who don't want to get, or people who don't believe that they can get better, and it's not conscious necessarily. It's like they don't have the resources in their life and from other people to get better, in combination with like the view that their body is broken. Like it's gonna be you're gonna have a hard time getting better, right? But like even with my own like lifting, it's like my first experiences in the gym were like super anxiety inducing because I wasn't like a strong kid. I didn't know how to move, and you're in kind of like that group football training dynamic. And I talk about this a decent amount, so it clearly has affected me. But like that left like an imprint on me. Like I'd go to the gym and I'd like I'd be doing okay, but then like I'd want to bench like 135 or 60 kilos, and it took like time and attention when it might have just been like, dude, you just gotta believe, like you gotta believe that this is gonna be part of what you do, because like your body's only giving you what it feels like you feel like it needs, right?
100%.
Which is freaking weird, right? But even this, I'm just doing more Olympic lifting, and like it's such a heady thing. Like when you're trying to do it well, and the crazy thing too is this is where the comparison game is. Like there's some dudes that are just like super powerful. They don't even like it. They just can do it, right? And you're like, shit, why can't I do that? And I think it's like take some of the thinking out of it, or at least think really optimistically. Do you find that like when you can get people to maybe take the thinking out or be more optimistic, that good things tend to happen?
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, it's a lot harder than just like, oh, just think positive. You know what I mean? What actually, I mean, again, this is part of compassion focused therapy, where like they kind of talk about how you have a set of genes, but the way those genes are expressed is very much shaped by your upbringing and what happens to you and your environment and all this kind of stuff. So that epigenetic factor is pretty moldable by the environment. So definitely there's a exactly what you were talking about. There's a big part of like your life experiences shaping how you think about things, and therefore how you behave and how your thought processes go with this threat and drive and soothe system thing I've been talking about as well. So there's a huge factor involved with that. I mean, I can see it a lot in myself as well. I actually was born in South Africa, and I moved to Australia when I was 8. And I think there was like so much performance anxiety going into school, and like having to kind of make new friends and fit in and all this stuff. And I think it's actually like, when I think back, it's actually affected so many areas of my life. But you see how formative some of these moments are in hindsight, or how they may have been. Like, I don't know for sure if that's been the issue. I could just kind of think that it probably has been when I look back at it. But you also look at great athletes, and a lot of them are like verging on arrogant, right? Because they just have to believe in themselves so much to perform the way they do. And that's probably just like a psychological trait that helps them in what they're doing. So I think there's a big aspect to that. And so like as a coach as well, when you're coaching someone, it's like they're outsourcing some of that sort of belief to you. And you kind of have to find, where does this person need, an arm around the shoulders? Where does this person need a kick in the ass? Where do you need to implant some sort of idea that hopefully that seed grows a little bit and makes them question some of the stuff they're doing? It's quite a challenging thing to do, and it's an individual by individual basis, and it kind of depends on where in that journey they are and where they're at emotionally.
I think you just touched on like a huge point, and it's that belief is sometimes borrowed until like it is ingrained, sure. Right? And yeah, I mean, so much of like growing up too, I had like good coaches who were good at doing that, and then I had coaches who just didn't understand how much their words were affecting the kids or whatever, right? And yeah, it is like, let's be honest. I mean, this stuff is amazing, but we've also made it, and you're even struggling, not even struggling, I'll say your priorities have had to shift, and that's not bad. It's just different seasons of life. Like, but, you know, it's like we have prioritized physical exercise and training to a very high degree, and we still struggle with it, right? And
For sure.
and so, like, it's okay to struggle with it. It's one of those things, it's like, even if you never hit your goal weight, or you never hit your goal like target for like a bench press or whatever, like, training is still good for you, right? It's just hard to accept that, like, you might not ever reach that goal. I had to almost like make that like part of my operating system like a while ago. It's like, dude, you're never gonna be like the strongest person in the world. This, as delusional as even just that statement sounds, but like, you got to accept that, like, this is still something that makes you feel good, you know, and it's good for you mentally and physically, but that's kind of a hard thing to do in your brain, right?
Oh, it's really hard. I think you kind of have to have those external goals sometimes just to kind of gamify it a little bit for yourself. But you know, one of my favorite sayings is that the struggle is the point. Like, if you played golf and you got a hole in one every time you played, you wouldn't even bother doing it, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, the guy who goes into the gym and squats 405, you know, or like whatever that is, like in kilos, like the first time is like, okay, well, that wasn't fucking very hard. Like,
what's the point?
Yeah.
But I mean, I also felt that, like, because like, I got pretty muscular and pretty lean, and I would have a lot of people come in to the gym, and I'd be like, yeah, so what are your goals and stuff? And they'd be like, oh, well, like, my goal physique's like what you've got, sort of thing. And I'd be like, dude, it's nothing special or whatever. But like, objectively, I was in better shape than literally 99% of people. Like, but it's just funny how whenever you reach some new level that you feel like you're on the bottom of the rung, or the bottom rung of the ladder again. And you just got to keep climbing it. And then your standards shift the whole time. It's something that we all know logically, but we don't ever really engage with emotionally, I think.
Yeah, it's great. Engaging with it emotionally is like it's a different thing. You got to like sit with it, right? And that's not something we're very good with. All right, this has been awesome. I appreciate your time so much. Like, give me your like crash course on if you like the big things that people should do if they want to train and get stronger, build muscle, have some fun.
Cool. Well, I would, like I said before, just really identify what you're trying to do in the gym. I think there's got to be a balance of like what works and what is fun, because I think what works will, if you're making some progress, that's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But really, I think if you're nailing those basic principles, like I said, start with effort. Relatively low volume is fine. Relatively few exercises is fine, and use that as almost like your spine that you then build other things on top of. And bear in mind as well that like just having an idea of like being able to dip in and out of different physical qualities and like bring them up bit by bit is a really sort of fun project mindset that you can have that will keep your training interesting and fun over years. And that's definitely something that I would think about. But like that old adage of like, you know, time under the bar and not being injured plus time, you'll get strong. That's just how it works, right? So you just got to find a way to like keep yourself under the bar and enjoying it over time.
Yeah, that is the one thing I will say. Like I am just learning to buy into more. I wish my mentality at 22 is what it is at 37, and I still do some of the same stupid shit. It's like, dude, like, but it is, just be. I have a group of it was just ladies. They were like my wife's like ballet friends, and then they all started bringing their boyfriends, and so it's like this group strength class it's one night a week. A few of them I program a second workout for, but like they're getting stronger with like one in session with me, and then they go to the gym maybe once or twice a week outside of it. And the ladies actually are just like they make progress like better than the men, because like the men are constantly like, I'm gonna, you know, like they're just pushing a little too hard or whatever.
Yeah.
And they're kind of more inconsistent. Like the ladies actually show up, but it's just like, let it work. Just let it work. Like do the thing and let it, it's just hard. It's hard for us to do that, right?
100%. But it does
so
work.
Luke, where do people find you?
LukeTulloch.com, or my Instagram is Luke Tulloch.
I appreciate your time. Putting out good content. It's a freaking feels like a dumpster fire out there sometimes, but I appreciate your work, man. So
thank you, man.
thanks so much.
No, I appreciate it.
Peace.
Peace.